So Damien, I wanted to ask, first of all, what is happening in the UK in terms of the whole mix of digital advertising? And I think in the UK, the advertising buying is sort of combined, the broadcast and digital. So where is the mix right now, and where might it be going?
Okay, the mix right now, probably for the majority of our clients, around about under 10% between video pre-roll and TV. I think in the UK, talking about where it's going, from our client perspective, there's a tendency to want to revert everything back by procurement departments and what we tell them to one level, which could endanger of a very commoditised market. When I talk about that, the one thing which everyone always points to is, does it add incremental reach for whatever audience? Now, we know that for the younger audiences, VOD does indeed do quite a bit of incremental reach. For the older audiences, however, TV's it's in good health. And I think to progress pre-roll and VOD, we need to think of it in a slightly different way. So rather than just looking at it purely, is it adding reach, which some of our clients obviously want to look at, it's an argument certainly. We need to look at what it's actually doing. I mean, there are a million and one things you can do with pre-roll. A company's out such as Innovid, Brainian, and they can make that the entire concept and what people can do with it a lot more open and interactive. So it might be that scenario which clients want to go, and you could buy via that pre-roll unit. So I think we need to get over that pure commoditisation of additional reach before we can move forward, and I think that's slightly restricting the level of VOD spend.
Well, what about the pricing? Some people have said that the online video inventory is too expensive. I don't know what your thoughts. Is it where does the market play? That's a very general question, but talk about pricing in your point of view.
So again, this comes back to the entire thing of let's get back to what we know and then look at pricing on a like-for-like basis. And of course, VOD isn't TV. It's a different beast by default. Now, the next question is, well, what kind of premium do you attach to it? Well, if you revert it back to a broad buying audience, household kids or 16-34 adults, that's when you get into a bit of trouble because I think we're going to talk about addressability. If the audience changes, then there's less wastage, and therefore you're looking at it from a slightly different angle. Equally, if you've got somebody who starts off with a 20-second pre-roll, but then opens it up and interacts for 3 minutes because the message is so good or the content's so much better behind it, that's a very different route from a TV 30-second spot. So it's ensuring we don't just look at it on a pure like-for-like basis, because it isn't, as far as I'm concerned, like-for-like.
And we're going to speak to the Nielsen guys, Andrew, shortly, but what is the impact of OCR, and tell us a little bit about some of the new data that's coming into your world.
Well, OCR is a really interesting one because it kind of counteracts everything I've just said. And by that I mean, because our clients are looking for an answer to the incremental reach question, we're then going to naturally go back to the various audiences you can buy on TV. And OCR's probably in a good place, as in showcasing that it is adding something. I think that's a valuable thing to learn. What we need to ensure we do is look at the data that's throwing out and just saying, so that's doing a job for that audience. However, moving forward, we shouldn't just be looking at an audience. You shouldn't be doing a pure like-for-like metric. But it's a good example of a question our clients will ask when it does come down to extension of reach is, well, what's it adding? Am I getting that audience? And from that reassurance basis, which we need to reassure our clients, for asking those questions, I think it's got a role to play. Great.
I wanted to talk about this real-time brand advertising. People are talking about it. There's a company called Transmitten, I think. And I know that we're going to be covering the Digitas conference in New York. They're New Fronts next week, and they're very keen on this so-called real-time brand advertising. What are your thoughts about that? Where does that stand?
Real-time brand advertising seems to be a catch-all for pretty much everything, whether it's social media, whether it's an emergency schedule a client would want to do for crisis management. Transmission it's effectively, and we work with a number of partners, that's just one we work with, which is a way of broadcasting something live via ad units. So it might be that one of our clients has got a celebrity, and at a certain point they want him to broadcast live 30 seconds, and it's a way of doing that in banner. It's an interesting concept, and from that side of stuff, we're talking about real buying more than kind of real brand planning. When we talk about real brand planning, we're looking more about what we're learning from social media. Can we react accordingly? Do people like certain creatives? And it all obviously feeds into a big part about how we then go forward. to buy the subsequent campaigns and at that time.
And let me just ask you about branded advertising again, which is sort of sponsored. It means a lot of different things to different brands and to publishers. But where do things stand in terms of the work that you guys do? And we'll follow on. But where do things stand with so-called brand advertising? In other words, sponsored, or that things are created with a sponsor who backs it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got your spot buying, as it were. And then an extension of that is getting more integrated with content. Now, if a client sees a piece of content or works towards a piece of content with one of the publishers, and it's something which they feel a big affinity to their brand, then they can work in a more holistic way than just a pre-roll in front, whether that be sponsorship, whether it be advertiser-funded programming, whether it's putting their own products into the production. These are areas which, of course, we discuss with our clients when we look at and talk to our various partners.
And I'm going to just open this up to the panel a little bit. Ruth, tell us about branded advertising, what it means to you guys, and what you're doing. And if you could speak into the mic.
Yeah. At the moment, we're basically looking at, with Maxis and GroupM, a lot of the time we are looking at buying sort of branded TV as well as VOD as one complete plan. And as we've already touched on today, it's about content. So the content is allowing us to actually promote pre-roll more than ever before, because we quite often have clients that are either a little bit reticent or sort of unconfident about using pre-roll and going into that arena. So if they understand and know that, back to the viewer again, they understand a Coronation Street, if we're able to then put that onto a plan on itv.com, for example, it's much easier for us to then sell that in and justify the levels that we want them to invest. So as Damien has already mentioned, we're looking sort of between 6 and 10%, depending on the client, the audience, but we need to justify that.
Percentage? Could you explain the percent?
Yeah, so we're looking at of every TV budget that is spent, we're thinking around sort of 6% to 10% of that would be invested into pre-roll. So when I'm talking about pre-roll in this sense, it's broadcaster and videology perhaps, or sort of other suppliers and networks. But it's, again, sort of an area of looking at incremental reach, because that constantly comes up with clients as to how we can keep pushing this and justifying the levels that we are investing.